So let's begin with a starting context. If someone asked you, why should I study the Bhagavad Gita? What is there in the Gita for me? What is the Gita all about? If you had to answer in one sentence, what would you say? Do we have a mic?
Yeah.
Yes, please. Maybe whenever you answer the question, you can tell your name and also tell where you have come from, and then you can answer the question. Okay.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. So I am Mahesh, came from Singapore. So one line, maybe I think life's manual.
Okay, thank you. So the Gita is life's manual. I myself used this word before, and I also use it, but I'm a little, over the years I have become a little more uncomfortable with this word, because life is too complicated to have any manual. The realities of life are so vexing at times. In principle, I think the point is correct. I prefer to use the word guidebook nowadays. Because manual conveys a little bit too simplistically. Like a manual for a device, you press this and this will open. You press this and this will happen. Life is not about pressing buttons. So, but the principle is right. The Gita is a guidebook. And we all need some guidance for living. Okay, thank you. Any other answers? Yes, please. Can you pass the mic behind?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, I am Tejas and I have come from Mumbai. Prabhuji, according to me or whatever I have learned through your lectures also and through your courses, that Gita is, it teaches, once you were mentioning in one of the lectures, which I like very much, that Gita is teaching us how to live our life and prepare ourselves for the death.
Okay. So, how to live and how to leave, you can say. Yes, the Gita is about living our life in the optimum way. Yes, thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Yes.
My name is Govinda Devidasi. I am also from GEV Mumbai. So, in my opinion, my Lord Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita just for a guidance of the, this Yuga people, Kali Yuga people. So whatever he said is 101% correct.
Okay.
So I want to learn
yes,
more and more about it.
Guidance for Kali Yuga.
Yes.
Yes, true.
हरे कृष्ण प्रभु जी, मेरा नाम रमा है and I'm from Mumbai, Bandra, and whatever I have read about Bhagavad Gita, I'm very new to ISKCON. So for me it's like self-discovery.
Self-discovery. Yeah. Go ahead.
भगवान ने जब भी भगवान कृष्ण ने अर्जुन को, because Arjun was bewildered and confused, so Gita can take you from confusion to clarity in life, can clear your doubts and can help you to discover yourself.
Yes, to understand who we are, what we are meant to do.
Yeah.
Yes, from confusion to clarity. Thank you. He said. Anyone else? Yes, please.
Hare Krishna Guru. I am Rahul from Ahmedabad. Bhagavad Gita is also a summary of the entire Vedic knowledge, an executive summary of the entire vast Vedic knowledge.
Yes, executive summary of Vedic knowledge. It's a contemporary word for putting it. The traditional word is like Sarva Upanishado Gav Dogdha Gopal Vindana. That if you consider all the Upanishads to be like a cow, the essence of the cow is the milk, so the Gita is like the milk. Yes, true. So, any other answers? Yes, please.
I'm Jack from Canada, and I would say it's a conversation between a student and a teacher. a lot of life's questions, that things that I'm reflecting on are asked, and then Krishna shares answers.
Okay. So it's like it's a discussion on life's fundamental questions. Thank you, Jack. It's very true. So all these answers are valuable and valid. What we will try to do is we will look at the flow of the Gita and try to see what exactly is happening within it. So there are many ways to determine the purpose of a book. Now, in today's world, the Gita has become a book that is sacred. And it is sacred because of its wisdom, because it's considered a religious text for various reasons. And if we look at the Gita itself, generally when any book is there, like a Gita, there are three worlds that are intersecting over there. That is, the world in which it was spoken, the world which is reading it, that the Gita was spoken at a particular time. So you could say there is the world in which it was spoken. Then there is the world that is reading it. And then there is the world described in the book. What I mean by this, the book gives a world view. So there is a world described by the book. So the world behind the book, the world of the book, and the world reading the book. Now this might seem complicated, but it's, relatively speaking, this is not difficult. Say, I am going to speak something. So there is a subject I am going to speak about, but the subject is vast. I am going to speak it based on my understanding, my realization, and then you are going to understand this based on your background, your experience. So in one sense, in any discussion, these three things intersect. There's the subject itself that is being discussed, there's the speaker speaking the subject, and the audience hearing the subject. Say, after the same session, if a few of you meet and discuss what you found striking in the session, it's quite likely that each of you may find something different as striking, because it speaks to you where you are coming from. So most of the answers that you give were from the perspective of the world reading the book. That it is a guidebook for us, it is a manual for us. It helps us to live meaningfully. Now, the world in which it was spoken, the world behind the book. Now, one of the answers was, I would say, from this perspective, the answer that it is a summary of the Vedas. That is, at that time, Vedic knowledge was very prominent, and Arjuna wanted a summary of that. So let's look at the world of the book itself. So one way to understand what a book is about is to look at the start and the end of a book. If, say, we hear a talk, now different talks serve different purposes. Some are inspirational talks, some are more educational talks. If a talk is educational, then it often has a clear structure and flow. So the speaker may tell at the beginning, this is what I'm going to speak about today. This is the issue that we are going to address. And at the end, the person may say that, okay, this is what we discussed today. And then, if the speaker is a well-structured speaker, then that's the topic that probably they have discussed in between. So, I was just some time ago in LA, and we were going through the New Age spirituality A part of LA. So there on a wall is scribbled. The Bible is the answer. Jesus is the answer. And somebody had written that. And then somebody had written that below in bigger italics box. God knows what is the question. So the point is that an answer is not of much value unless the person has the question. That a medicine is not of much value unless a person has the disease or a person knows someone who has the disease. So once we understand what is the problem that the Gita is addressing, then we can see whether this problem relates with my life in some ways. And then the wisdom of the Gita will start making more sense. So the Bhagavad Gita itself, how many chapters does it have? 18. How many verses? 700. So we could say that the Gita begins with 1.1 and ends with 1878. 80 chapters, 78 verses. That's one way to look at the start and the end of the Gita. Now, another way to look at it is, the name of the book is Bhagavad Gita. But is it that all the verses of the Gita are spoken by Bhagavan? No. There are other speakers. There are basically, apart from Krishna, there are 3 other speakers. Who are they? Okay. Arjun, then Sanjay, and then Dhritarashtra. So basically, we'll look at the significance of these 4 speakers also being there soon. But there is, you could say, an inner conversation between Krishna and Arjuna, and that conversation is placed within a bigger conversation between Sanjay and Dhritarashtra. In fact, this is a part of the Mahabharata, especially the description of the Mahabharata war is what Sanjay is doing to Dhritarashtra. So, within this broader context, this inner discussion, we could say it begins with 2.7, where Arjuna asks a question, and then it ends with 1873, where Arjuna says, now I have understood, now I am satisfied. Nashto moha smritir labdha. Now why 2.7? Because 2.7, we'll come to that in due course, but that is the driving question of the book, the question that Arjuna is having. Now, before this, Krishna has spoken some words, but Krishna's instructive words, if you go deeper further, Krishna's instructive words, where Krishna is not just having a conversation, but is actually starting the education. Just like say, when we start a session. Say right now in this session, maybe Chaitanya Prabhu, the introducer, the organizer, spoke a few words. Then maybe then I speak. Maybe at the end of the session, somebody will give a vote of thanks. Somebody will appreciate things. So in a program, there can be things other than what the speaker is speaking. And even when the speaker is speaking, initially the speaker may just have some introductory words, some discussion, and then the speaker may dive into the actual topic. So the first instructive words that Krishna speaks is in 2:11. And the last instructive words that Krishna speaks is in 1866. And his first words and last words, they are especially significant for understanding what the Bhagavad Gita is about. Now this particular hermeneutic is the way of understanding scripture. So this hermeneutic is adopted by Jiva Goswami. He is a prominent Bhakti Yoga teacher in our tradition, and he uses this for the Bhagavatam also, but he uses it for the Bhagavad Gita also. And he says that we can look at these 2 verses to understand what the purpose of the Gita is. So let's look at these 2 verses, 2:11 and 1866. So I'll explain the meaning. So this is Krishna is beginning to be Sri Bhagavan Vacha. So let's recite it line by. I'll explain the line and we can recite it. Sri Bhagavan Vacha. So then he says, Ashochan. Shochan is basically lamentation. Ashochan is not worth grieving, not worth lamenting, not worth getting agitated about. Anvashochastam. That which is not worth lamenting, oh Arjuna, you are lamenting that. Ashochan anvashochastvam. Pragyavadam. He says you are speaking words which are filled with wisdom. So there are words which are filled with wisdom, wise words, wise sounding words. Chabhashyase, you are speaking those words. So Krishna is saying, Arjuna, there is a disconnect between your words and your emotions. Pragyavadams chabhashyase. Then he says, Gat asun. Asun is the life air. Gata means has gone away. What it means is the people who have passed away, where the life has ended. Agatasuns, where life has not yet passed away. Gatasun, agatasumscha. Na anushochanti. Not lamenting. So the first word was ashochan, and again it is na anushochanti, does not lament. Who? Panditaha. Na anushochanti panditaha. So if we look at this verse, Krishna is making basically 3 points in this verse. In 2:11, Krishna is telling, first, if we divide the verse into 4 lines, A, B, C, D. The first line he's saying is that Ashochan anvashochastvam, that not worth lamenting, not worth being distressed about. So that is not worth lamenting, you are lamenting. And the second point he says is that despite your wise words, your words may be wise, but your emotions are not. And the last 2 lines basically he's saying is, the wise don't lament. And what do they not lament about? Life and death, or living and dying, basically. So now the key word here is not worth lamenting, not worth getting worked up about, not worth getting distressed. So now if we go to the last verse that Krishna speaks, that is 1866. It is Sarva Dharman Parityajya. Krishna says that give up all your conceptions of what you are meant to do. Sarva Dharman Parityajya. Then Mam Ekam Sharanam Vraja. So Sharanam, surrender to me alone. And Aham Tvam Sarva Papebhyo. Whatever kinds of wrong actions you might be afraid of, whatever reactions that might come because of that, mokshaishami, I'll free you from that. Aham tvam sarva papebhyo. Ma shuchaha means do not lament. So ashochan was the first word that Krishna spoke, and ma shuchaha is the last word. Do not lament. Mokshaishami ma shuchaha. So he's saying, I will free you from all sinful reactions. Okay, did we recite the whole words? No. Okay, so Ma Shucha is what is the most important thing for us. So basically what is happening here is that 2.11 begins with, I'll give an example to illustrate this. That don't, okay. Now, lamenting is not a word we very commonly use outside of outside the philosophical context. But let's put it, not worth fearing. That's the starting word of the Gita. And the last is don't fear. Don't. So, to give a context, say, somebody goes to a doctor and maybe they've got some swelling on their chest and they're worried, is this cancer? Is this malignant? Is it in the last stage? Am I going to die? And they go to the doctor and they say, doctor, I'm really worried. And the doctor says, this is not worth worrying. Now, the doctor may mean that there's no cancer at all, or it's cancer, it's treatable, it's cancer, it's in the early stages. But the point is, in the beginning, the doctor says, this is not worth worrying. And then, at the end of giving the diagnosis, giving the prescription, the doctor says, don't worry. So basically, Jiva Goswami says that life puts us all into distress of various kinds. It can be fear, it can be loss. Life puts us in distress, and he says the Gita frees us from distress. So Arjuna has been put in distress, and the purpose of the Gita is to free us from distress. And how does the Gita free us from distress? By giving us a worldview. So the purpose of the Gita is that Arjuna, who was in immense agony, was freed from that agony. And similarly, we all can be freed from agony. That is the broad purpose of the Gita. So we all may be distressed because of various things. Now some of them say, I'm not distressed at all. Well, that's possible. But distress can range over various things. When we talk about distress can just simply be a dissatisfaction. Dissatisfaction that, my boss doesn't value my work enough, I'm not recognized enough at my work, or my family doesn't takes me for granted, doesn't appreciate my contributions. That could be dissatisfaction. But it can range from there to devastation. Devastation may be because maybe we lost a loved one. Devastation because a relationship in which we had put a lot in has broken apart. Devastation may be because maybe we lost our job, lost our finances, we may have got a terrible health diagnosis, whatever it is. So distress can go over a spectrum. And there is always something dissatisfying in our life for us. The Gita will give us a perspective by which we can rise above this distress. Now, interestingly, the Gita does not do anything to change Arjuna's situation directly. It basically changes Arjuna's vision of the situation. So when we look at the Gita, there is, in this chapter I'll be talking about two main things, but this is a key diagram for this. See, in any book, there is the specific. There is the specific and there is the universal. So the Gita starts from a very specific position. What is the specific position where the Gita starts?
The center of the Kurukshetra.
Yeah, center of the Kurukshetra. So it starts from a specific place. And then it rises towards universal principles. So the specific problem that Arjuna is facing may be very different from the problem that we are facing. But the Gita does not address Arjuna's specific problems. It focuses on universal principles. But understanding the specific problem is very helpful to understand how the Gita is addressing that with universal principles. So it begins with specifics and it ends with specifics. That is, it comes back, the last part is Sanjay speaking with Dhritarashtra. And we'll come back to that specific later. But let's right now focus in this session on the starting specific. This is more or less chapter 1. Actually, chapter 1 until it goes till around 2.10. So, in your understanding, what is the specific problem that drives Arjuna to hear the Bhagavad Gita?
They don't want to kill his family members.
Okay, you can raise your hands, whoever wants to speak this. Okay, who answered just now? Okay, Arjuna, so Arjuna's agony, Arjuna's distress, the Gita is spoken to help Arjuna come out of distress. So, reluctance to fight against his family. Okay.
He did not want to kill, because by killing his own family members, he would not be able to enjoy the kingdom.
Okay. That without family, there's no enjoyment. Yeah.
So the traditions will be lost, if elders are killed, and even the male members of the family who are participating in the war are killed. The family will be left with maybe widows and those people behind, kids. So they will go astray. Maybe they will not get any direction how to live life. And the traditions might be lost in the due course of time.
Yeah, the elders are killed, the traditions will be destroyed. That's true. More than the widows not getting any direction in life, what is more likely is that predatory elements will exploit them. So Varna Sankara, what the Gita talks about, it is not so much about because the defenseless will get misled. It is rather the defenseless will be exploited by predatory elements.
I'll be incurring sin.
Who?
Arjuna.
Incurring sin. That he thinks that killing is sinful. That's one reason. That's true. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Deepthi from Mumbai. He saw his elders such as Bhishma Pitama and Dronacharya who are very exalted, very, I would say, devoted and wise mentors and gurus, and he didn't want to fight them. Okay.
Yes. It's like, how can I attack my elders? That was almost like the tipping point for him. That's when I just can't do this. Yes, thank you. One or two more answers? Yes, behind.
Prabhuji, that was not the proper time actually when everything was fully arranged and both the people were ready to fight, and Arjuna was getting confused at that time. That is why, to convince him, Lord Krishna spoke Bhakti.
So it was basically Arjuna was distressed because he was confused. That's what you're saying, or what is?
Yeah. No, he was confused when at that point of time when everything was arranged, just people were ready to fight. That time, such a...
So are you answering the question why Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita?
Yes.
Okay.
That time it was not relevant to speak like this,
Oh, okay. So that was not the right time for Arjuna to express these questions. Yes, we'll explore that soon. Yes, please.
So this distress was because of attachment or moh?
Okay, what was the attachment?
Moh for his family members, for his
Okay.
grandfather, his guru, Dronacharya, and
Okay.
other relatives and cousins.
Yes, thank you. So all these answers are valid. Simultaneously, I feel that the issue goes much deeper over there. See, I talk about distress in different ways. Arjuna is basically facing an ethical crisis. What is the ethical crisis? He is torn between two duties. He comes ready to do his Kshatriya Dharma. Kshatriya Dharma is telling him, fight. But then, when he actually comes in the middle of the battlefield, and he sees that on the opposite side are my own people, and among them specifically my elders. Bhishma Drona Pramukta Sarvesham cha mahikshitam. Especially when he saw Bhishma and Drona, he started thinking that how can I kill them? That these are the people who taught me my archery skills. My fighting, my exhibition of my archery skills is meant for their pleasure. How can I fight against them? So the other was his Kula Dharma. Kula Dharma is his duty to his family, to his dynasty. So two duties pulled him in two opposite directions. So which duty was he to follow? So all the points he makes when he says, I'm afraid of doing something sinful, he is thinking that what is the right thing for me to do at this point? So the question is essentially that there are two right things. So even protecting one's family, it is not a wrong thing. I just came from America about a few days ago. So in America, the American president's son has been found guilty in some trial for carrying a gun while he was using drugs. Carrying guns is not illegal. Using drugs is not illegal. But possessing a gun while you are using drugs is. So now the president was asked, the president has the right to pardon anyone. That is the discretion of the president. So he was asked, will you pardon your son? So initially he said, before the judgment came, before it was done, he was asked in court, if your son is found guilty, will you pardon him? So at that time he said no. But after the judgment has come, then he has waffled a little bit. Maybe it's my own son. How can I let him go to jail when I have the power to save him? So basically, there is this duty as a president, which is let the law take its course. But there's duty as a parent. I need to protect my son. So now which duty is higher? Because the president's duty is higher. It is very easy to say that when it is not our son involved. So basically, sometimes life puts us in situations where there are two right things. And which is the more right thing at that time? That is the question. So here, when Arjuna is, we can say Arjuna is attached, we can say Arjuna is an illusion. Well, yes, but it is not attachment or illusion of ordinary kind. Because the situation he is facing is itself extraordinary. Let's look at Arjuna's emotions. Now, was Arjuna having fear at the time? Was he afraid? Well, how many of you think say no? He was not afraid. Okay, how many of you think he was afraid? Okay, only one. Some of you are afraid to say that he was afraid. He's an exalted character. Can you say that he's afraid? Well, he was certainly having some strong emotion at that time. How do we know that?
Surrender.
Sorry? He was?
He surrendered. No,
He surrendered. Yeah, but surrender happened later. Before that?
His limbs were going to break.
Yes, there's the physical breakdown because of an emotional breakdown. He says, Gandivam sramsate hastat tvakchaiva paridhayyate. He says, I cannot even hold my bow. He says that my skin is burning, my hair are standing on end. And so he's clearly having, see, we all have certain emotions. Different times we have different emotions. And quite often, even when we have some emotions, we try to restrain those emotions. Say, if we are to meet some person and we find that person has leprosy. Now the leprosy is almost gone, but suppose they have a dark, ugly patch on their face. We might be shocked to see that. But cultured behavior means we will not show that shock. We will just act as if It's normal, we're dealing with that person. Somebody's scarred because of something. So we all have emotions and we try to restrain those emotions, if that is what is contextually required. Now Arjuna is having such emotions that he is not able to restrain them. In fact, what is the strongest sign that he has emotions? Very strong emotions. The most visible, most vivid sign. Sorry?
We were not fight.
I'll not fight. That's an action.
Mouth was drying.
Mouth was drying up. Yes. If somebody is in distress, what is the general way we understand he's in distress? He or she is in distress.
Falls from
Tears, yes. If somebody is, eyes are red, their cheeks are swollen because of tears having flown down their eyes, flown down from the eyes. So Arjuna was tam tatha krupaya vishtam ashuru purna kulekshanam. So Arjuna was in tears. Now, Arjuna's Kandiva fell down. Did it? It was slipped out. Now we can let's look at the severity of Arjuna's emotion. Whatever is the emotion, some of you felt it as fear, some of it is not fear. First, let's try to understand the plight of Arjuna. Normally, first of all, we can look at it, he's in tears. Now, first of all, generally, males are encouraged not to cry. In fact, they're discouraged to cry. Only babies cry, something like that. So, males generally don't express their emotions so vividly. Now, that doesn't mean all females express their emotions, but Arjuna is a male. He's not only is a male, he's not an ordinary male, he's a warrior. And warriors are generally trained to not show any weakness. And he's not just a warrior, he's a warrior on the battlefield. Like a player, before a match, might be, an Indian cricketer before the World Cup finals, might be in a little anxiety. But once they go out to bat, if they're batting and a bowler is coming, they will not show their trembling, if they're nervous. So on the battlefield, and it's not just on the battlefield, he is in the middle. That is the point of maximum visibility. So generally, even when we have emotions, if we are going through some difficulties, we may cry, but we don't cry in public. We cry in private. So Arjuna is a warrior on a battlefield in the point of maximum visibility. He is not just a warrior, he's a warrior and a leader. Leader means that if the leader shows weakness, not only will the enemies exploit that, but even the supporters, they will become weakened. So at such a point for Arjuna to be in tears means something must have been totally not just consuming him, but overwhelming him. So for him to be in such tears, so what was it that was happening? Now, Srila Prabhupada writes in his purport that the hair is standing on end, the limbs quivering. This can be a sign of ecstasy. But was Arjuna in ecstasy? If somebody says Arjuna is in ecstasy, then probably they are in ecstasy. They are in ecstasy that makes them oblivious to daily reality. So Arjuna's strong emotion was indeed fear. But what was the nature of that fear? So basically there are two major misconceptions of the Gita, about the Gita, coming from the Gita's setting itself. The Gita's setting is very specific, but it leads to its significance if you want to see. So one significance was, or one misconception is that Arjuna became cowardly. Arjuna was afraid. So, okay, Arjuna was afraid. But all of you give several reasons about Arjuna's fear. So some people especially those who are from a martial background. One of my friends is working in the Indian Army now. And he said, I like the Gita. I said, okay. So many people, the Gita is a complex book and everyone I said, what do you like about it? Gita tells you to be tough. Don't give in to emotions. That's a message that we need as fighters. Well, okay. I told him, I'm finding it tough to not critique this understanding of the Gita. So, is the Gita simply telling Arjuna to toughen up? Was Arjuna, he says, Arjuna, he was saying that Arjuna just, when he saw the opposing army, he got an attack of nerves. He became cowardly. And Krishna is telling him, buck up, don't be a coward. But was Arjuna being cowardly? No. How can we know that Arjuna was not being cowardly? Because we think he's a good person?
He trusts on God.
Sorry?
He trusts on God.
He?
Trusts on God, Krishna.
That comes later. But at this particular point, that's true. He was a great fighter, that is true. So it's uncharacteristic of him to become cowardly. But Arjuna's fear, so we can look from his speech. If somebody is overwhelmed by something, we can see what is he worried about. What is he? So Arjuna's fear, did he even express once fear of his own death? No. So if somebody is a coward, they will naturally be afraid of their own death. So Arjuna does not even once, he doesn't even mention his own death. He was ready to die. In fact, he said that even if I don't fight, let them kill me. Apratikaram ashastram. I may be without any resistance, without any weapons. Ashastram shastrapanayo. That they can kill me. So Arjuna's fear was actually of doing the wrong thing. So doing the wrong thing. That was his fear. And in one sense, for him, at that particular point, is fighting the war. It's a completely natural thing to do. He's come on the battlefield, let's fight. That's what I've expected from me. That's what I have trained throughout my life to do, and I will do it. But Arjuna does not do it. In fact, commentators, especially a commentator named Motivational Saraswati, he describes the whole purpose of chapter 1 is to demonstrate Arjuna's qualification for getting the wisdom of the Gita. What is his qualification? That is his thoughtfulness. Now, it's very easy to just do what we are expected to do. The world tells us you have to do this, just go around and go ahead and do it. So now, say to take a contemporary situation, say there is a CEO of a company which has 5,000 people. And because of various geopolitical effects, economic effects, and the company is going under. And there just doesn't seem to be any alternative except to declare bankruptcy. At that point, CEO is very worried. Now, we could ask, what is the CEO worried about? The CEO may say that, actually, I bought this big mansion. And I don't know if I am no longer the CEO, how will I pay the mortgage for the months? Well, that's a valid worry. But the CEO says, we have thousands of people working in our company. What will happen to their families? What will happen to their livelihood? I will do everything in my power to prevent this. So when both of them are worries, are both of them at the same level? No. It's categorical difference. So the CEO may be advised by the economic advisors, by the legal advisors. They say, no, this is the only way ahead. Just the company is going to company is going down, just declare bankruptcy and salvage whatever is salvageable. But then if the CEO says, no, I really want to explore, is there any other option? So that, you can say that the CEO's attachment. But you can also say it is the CEO's, their concern for their company. So Arjuna's concern shows his thoughtfulness, his broad-mindedness. And that's what makes him, his thoughtfulness or his broad-mindedness. Broad-mindedness means he is thinking about something bigger than himself. So he's a CEO, company nearing bankruptcy. So we can think of many situations where somebody can be very worried about themselves. Like during the pandemic, a doctor could be worried, oh, I don't want to get this infection, so I'll not go to the hospital at all. Or the doctor may think that there's so many people who need my services. And even if it means risking my life, I'll go there. So the doctor may have fear, I may get infected. Doctor may have fear that people may die. Both of them are fears, but they are different fears, isn't it? It could be about my mortgage. That could be one fear. It could be my employees' livelihood. So Arjuna's fear is very broad. So another way to understand Arjuna's situation, the dilemma that had brought him to tears. So basically, distress can come in different ways. I'll use two different words over here: adversity and atrocity. Do these two mean the same thing? When I was just in Bangladesh, I asked there, what is the difference between adversity and atrocity? So one person said, this question is adversity and atrocity for us. So, how many of you have heard the word adversity? Okay. How many of you have heard the word atrocity? Atrocity. Okay. So, can you guess? How many of you think the two are the same? Okay. How many of you think the two are different? Okay. How many of you think the difference doesn't make any difference? Okay. Yes, please.
I see adversity as like a challenge, and I see atrocity somehow having like a negative connotation, like it's a bad thing. That's
Okay.
how I feel.
Yeah. Atrocity is a bad thing. Okay, let's, I think we are in the right direction. Let's come back to this. You want to say something?
Adversity is like some difficult situation, and adversity is something someone is doing wrong thing of us.
Yes, that's precise. See, adversity is natural. It's like bad things happening to us. That's adversity. But atrocity is intentional. It's bad things done to us. So, consider, for example, the Pandavas faced many difficulties in their life. Their father died when they were still very young. Was that adversity or atrocity? Adversity. Now, when they were still young, Bhima was poisoned. That was an atrocity. So now, among adversity and atrocity, which is more difficult to bear? Atrocity. Because both are difficult to bear. But when we can put a face to some action, as a cause of some action, how can you do this? What kind of human being are you? What kind of person are you? How could anybody do like this? So atrocity is much more difficult to bear. But worse than that is agony. Agony is where bad things have to be done by us. In both of these, bad things are happening to us. But especially for a responsible person, when the most pain is not when bad things happen, but when I just don't have any option, I have to do a bad thing. One of my friends is a doctor. He was telling me during the COVID pandemic, he said, there's so many times when I would have only one oxygen cylinder. There are two patients who are terribly sick. And because of the sheer number of patients, you didn't even have any case history of anyone properly. So you can give the oxygen to only one patient. But because we don't know the case history of that patient, we don't know whether that patient will survive. So the other patient whom we don't give the oxygen is definitely going to die. But the patient whom we give the oxygen may also not survive. So it's a terrible situation to be in. Where whatever we do now there is the doctor choosing to give the oxygen to one patient. It's not, when you say it's a bad thing, it's not ethically wrong. Ethically, that's what the limited situation we have to do one thing only. But still, it's emotionally terrible thing to do, isn't it? It's a bad thing in the sense, something which makes us feel bad about doing that thing. We feel horrible. One of our friends, he was very interested in relating with people. So he said he got into human resources. He was an engineer, but he went into that field, got some specialization. And he said, I thought I'll help people develop their potential, I'll help people grow and help them, what are the rough edges they have, polish them. But he said, the part of my job that I hate is firing people. Now, ethically, okay, if the company is going down, the company has to do some layoffs, you have to do that. But still, emotionally, it's a terrible thing to have to do, isn't it? So now Arjuna, he was facing a situation of agony. That even if it's the right thing to do, okay, he has to fight against Bhishma and Drona. This is the stuff of his worst nightmares. The people whom he wants to make proud of by fighting, those are the very people he has to fight against. How can he do that? And it is at this point that Arjuna just breaks down. When Krishna says to Arjuna, you are being weak-minded, Krishna is echoing what would be the public perception of his. You're just giving into weakness. Krishna says, this is not weak. Arjuna says, this is not weakness. He says, would it be just as simple a situation for you if you had to fight against your guru or your grandfather? Katham bhishma maham sankye dronam cha madhusudanam Yishuvi pratiyotsyami pujarha varisudana. How can you fight? So, this is the predicament of Arjuna. That Arjuna is put in a situation where there are no good options. Whatever he is going to do, it's a Shakespeare phrase that to do or not to do or not to do. So, to use more contemporary language, maybe a profane language, damned if you do, damned if you don't. So that was Arjuna's predicament. He says, now he himself knows if he fights, he has to kill his relatives. Now if he doesn't fight, that's not going to solve the problem. He may not fight, but it doesn't mean that the opposite side is going to let them live. The opposite will kill them. Arjuna says, I am ready to die. But does he want his family to die? Does he want his children to be killed? And the enemy is not likely to stop with just killing Arjuna and his family. They are likely to target everyone who is allied with Arjuna. You allied with our enemies, we will make you pay a price. So, Arjuna is in this situation, and that's where he breaks down. So, when we are put in a situation where there seems to be no way ahead, that he says, I don't see any positive path ahead, any way to move ahead. So Arjuna's crisis, when we say crisis, it goes down to various levels. First, we may say it's emotional. That, Arjuna is overwhelmed by emotion, which is true. But beyond that, it is ethical. What is the right thing to do? But then beyond that, it is existential. Is when no path ahead leads anywhere bright. And what is the point even of existing? When we have to do terrible things and we just have no options. And how do we find value in our living? So That is Arjuna's question. When he asks, Pruchhami tvam dharma sammudha chetaha. I want to know what is dharma. When he's using the word dharma, he's not really talking here about religion. That is the modern connotation of the word. That's not what he's talking about. Dharma, is he talking about duty? Well, yes, but there are two duties for him. So he's asking about the right thing to do. What is the right thing to do when no thing seems to be right? And here he's talking about right, not just in the sense of morally right, but also he's talking about what is meaningful. When nothing seems to be meaningful, when everything seems to be just a terrible path ahead, how do we find a meaningful path ahead? That is what the Gita will teach. And while the Gita's teaching itself is complicated, and we will unravel it as we move forward, what the Gita says is that the highest reality is that yes, there is the reality of two bad choices, there is the reality of Arjuna's emotions, but the highest reality is God's love for us. And in the light of God's love, God will do that. God will work through us, work around us to bring about good even from terrible situations. So rather than focusing, oh, this crisis, that crisis, Gita helps Arjuna to raise his vision upwards. Just looks ahead, there is only darkness. Just first look up and then look ahead. The Gita helps Arjuna look up first. Einstein said that problems can't be solved at the same level of consciousness that created them. So the Gita will raise Arjuna's vision. So I'll conclude with one last point. I said there are two misconceptions about the Gita which can come from the setting. One is Arjuna was cowardly. And Krishna, the other is Krishna was insightful. Insightful means Krishna incited Arjuna to fight. I spoke in Stanford recently, and there one professor of religious studies, he attended my talk and he said, I read the Bhagavad Gita. And he said that he is mostly Christian studies. He just read the Bhagavad Gita comparative religion. He says, I like what Arjuna says. I don't like what Krishna says. He says, what Arjuna says makes sense. And Arjuna doesn't want to fight. Why is Krishna getting him to fight? Is Krishna a god who wants to incite war? Is Krishna a violence-inducing god? What do you think? Why? Because we like Krishna? No. There's one Indian social commentator who passed away a few years ago. There's a headline in a newspaper. I saw that. So XYZ, he says, India's biggest mistake after independence was that we did not follow the Bhagavad Gita. I said, that's interesting. And I read the article. His thesis was, if India had followed the Bhagavad Gita, as soon as Pakistan was formed, we would have attacked it, because Pakistan is adharma, we are dharma, we would have attacked Pakistan and we would have annexed Pakistan. And we didn't follow the Bhagavad Gita. That's the cause of all our problems. Well, is this the teaching of the Gita? Well, if you see, if Krishna's purpose had been to get Arjuna to fight. Now, it is true that after hearing the Gita, Arjuna fights. But if that were the sole purpose of Krishna in speaking the Gita, now say, if there are two people, there's A and there is B, and there's a third person C, who wants to get A to attack B, A to become violent towards B. So what is the best way to do that? What is the easiest way to get A to attack B?
Tell bad about B.
Tell bad about B. I was in San Francisco, so I was speaking this to a group of yoga students. So one girl, she said, show A the text that B has sent you about her. Oh, you think like this about me? You say like this about me? I will get back at you. So I asked her, is this the voice of experience speaking? So basically, the simple way to get somebody angry with somebody else is to badmouth that person, to demonize that person. Now, if you consider, Krishna did not have to demonize the Kauravas because they were already demons, isn't it? They had already done so many demoniac things. But it is remarkable that Krishna does not mention even one of the demoniac activities that the Kauravas have done. Now, Arjuna is a warrior. And if Krishna had just reminded Arjuna, remember what they tried to do to Draupadi? Do you remember her hot tears as she was being dishonored? Do you remember her censorious glances as she reproachfully looked at you, begging for help, chiding you for not helping? Do you not want to get back at the people who did that to your wife? Just one sentence describing that incident would have been enough to make Arjuna's blood boil and to get him to fight. And Krishna would have said, you are so worried about Bhishma and Drona? They also didn't do anything at that time. They also deserve to die. But Krishna does not mention that at all. He does not even mention it once. So his purpose is to get Arjuna to fight. It's like if you can eat food like this, why go all the way around like this? So that's because Krishna's purpose is something far higher. Krishna's purpose is not to give circumstantial reasons for fighting. If that had been his purpose, then the Gita would have been of interest only to history buffs who knew about a particular battle. Krishna's purpose is to give universal principles for living and for decision making. So in that context, does Krishna get Arjuna to fight? Yes, he does. But Krishna's message of the Gita is not primarily about fighting a war. It is about learning how to determine what is the right thing to do. How to fight, or how to do what is right, or how to do what is... how to know what is the right thing to do when nothing seems to be working for us. That is the core message of the Gita. And how that message works is what we will be discussing in our subsequent discussions. So let me summarize what we discussed today. I discussed 5 main points in so this session was a Gita introduction. So I discussed 5 main points. The first was that how the Gita, its purpose, if we look at it from the book itself, it is to free from distress, free from lamentation. So we discussed this based on 2.11 and 1866. So the Gita can have many purposes, but the book's own purpose, as given in it, is, from the context we can infer it, is that the world puts us in lamentation, and it is to free us from lamentation, free us from distress. Then we discussed that what is the situation. So Arjuna's reluctance, it came not just because he was attached, but because he was ethically torn between 2 right things, Kshatriya Dharma and Kula Dharma. His duty is, you could say, his professional duty and his family duty. And he just didn't know. So what is the right thing to do at such a time? Then we discussed that how Arjuna was not so much attached as he was broad-minded. Broad-minded was that he was concerned about the bigger picture. He was concerned about society. So there was no fear of his own death. His concern was for society at large. And he was worried that his fear was I might do the wrong thing. What is the wrong thing that I might do? And in that connection, we understand that what Arjuna faced was a situation where there can be different kinds of distresses, but among the various kinds of distresses, what Arjuna faced was the worst kind of distress. It's like we can have adversity, bad things happen to us, then there is atrocity, when bad things are done to us. Now, agony is especially for a responsible person. If a person just doesn't care, okay, whatever happens, how do I care? But for a responsible person, when they have to do a bad thing, so bad things have to be done. That is extremely painful. And the last point we discuss is Krishna's purpose in speaking the Gita. It is not about fighting. How to get Arjuna to fight? It is about living. What are principles for living? It is principles and specifically for decision making. When nothing seems meaningful, how to find meaning in life? When all options ahead seem to be dark, how can we move ahead? So, thank you very much. We will take a short break. And if you have any questions, we will come back and we will discuss some of the questions and we'll move to the next session thereafter. Is that okay? Or should we take questions now? And we'll...
Questions now.
Okay. So maybe for 10 minutes we can take questions before we go ahead. Yes. Any questions?
In crisis, we said emotional, ethical, and existential.
Yeah.
I didn't understand existential.
See, ethical means what is the right thing to do. But when there doesn't seem to be anything right to do, what is the point even of living? What is the point of existence itself? So existential is at that very level where life itself does not seem like worth living. See, basically every day when we wake up, we need to have something to look forward to in life. Maybe not on that day, but ahead in our life. If we have nothing to look forward to in our life, then even the most ordinary of activities start becoming very burdensome. So that was the ultimate situation. That's what I meant by existential crisis.
Thank you, Shravan. Thank you. You mentioned and quoted Jiva Goswami saying how this Bhagavad Gita is to learn how to remove distress, suffering. So immediately my heart and mind, I guess from my own lack of faith, I read Gita, at least superficially I live by the Gita, and I know others who do live by the Gita. I'm still distressed, and I observe distress in others. How to take that faith to another level?
Well, the Gita also says this world is dukkhalaya. So it does say that distress is a part of life. So when it says to free us from distress, it is not so much by removing distress from the world or even removing distress from our life. See, Krishna did not do anything magical by which Arjuna didn't have to fight the war. Krishna even didn't give any esoteric information. Oh, you know, Bhishma was so and so in this life, and Dora and so this life, and you and so, and you had these interactions, and because of which you are in this situation. So basically, if we consider our consciousness, this is what we are experiencing. Now, we can live. This color not visible. Okay. But you can see the red circle within it. Okay. So we can live in pain, where pain is the prominent or the sole experience that we have, or we can live with pain. So pain is going to be a part of our life experience. Nobody can avoid that. So what the Gita does is, Gita will give our consciousness. So if our consciousness is filled with something else, then that becomes prominent in our consciousness and the experience of pain becomes less. if you consider our life also, that what we look for in life, people say that we look for pleasure. We all want happiness. Well, yes, and no, really. What I mean by that is that if what we seek, I'll make this point now. What do we seek? So we may say we seek pleasure. Now, how many of you like to laugh? Isn't it? Oh my God, others don't like to laugh. So, maybe you're not answering the question because it's so absurd. We all like to laugh. So, we say, if somebody tells you from tomorrow onwards you have no family obligations, no financial obligations, no health obligations, from morning to night, just watch comedy shows and laugh. Would we like that? Yeah, maybe for half an hour, maybe for half a day, maybe if we are really fed up, maybe for a full weekend, we might binge on comedy shows. But after that, we want to do something, isn't it? What we really want is meaningful pleasure, not just pleasure. Because just laughing at comedy, it's just meaningless. After some time, it just becomes so pointless, so empty. So we want to do something meaningful in our lives, and through that we want pleasure. So, actually speaking, this is a point which we're going to discuss later, but let me mention it right now. The Atma has 3 characteristics. What are the characteristics of Atma? Does anyone know? Sat, Chit, Ananda. So that is what Krishna introduced in the Bhagavad Gita. Sat means what? Eternal. So based on these, we have first a drive for existence. All of us, we want to exist. That's why if somebody threatens our life, we will go to any extreme to try to protect our life. But we don't just want to exist. Animals exist. But we human beings, we want meaning in our existence. With our chit faculty, with our conscious faculty, we look for meaning. And that is why humans, we write books, we make art, we sing, we compose music, we explore philosophy, because we want meaning to our life. And then, after that, because of the Anand faculty of the soul, we seek pleasure. So, in today's world, what has happened is, so in one sense, in the natural progression of things, that there is, first we learn to exist, then we learn to find meaning, and then we get pleasure. But today's world tries to offer us pleasure without any meaning. Like pleasure is prioritized. And it's like the soul gets fragmented by that. Pleasure is not only prioritized, it's singularly prioritized. And it just doesn't work. So if there is pleasure without any meaning, then the pleasure of itself over a period of time becomes meaningless. And nowadays there's a culture of what they call, the West they call a sexual revolution. So the idea is that we reject all inhibitions on sexual engagement. And now what happens is people their bodies may touch many other bodies, but their hearts don't touch any other heart. So it's that kind of physical indulgence, it just becomes meaningless. So what we are looking for is not just pleasure, we're looking for meaningful pleasure. So the Gita says that the problem with looking for pleasure alone is that it is meaningless. So let me put it this way. When we pursue pleasure alone, then one problem is it is meaningless. It doesn't give meaning to our life. And it is also impossible. Because when we are seeking pleasure alone, in the smallest of pain, will make us feel that we have been defeated, we have lost. And life will bring pain to us. So that's why we are seeking for something more than pleasure. So to answer your question, yes, there will be distress. But the Gita can give us a meaning of life that is big enough to make distress bearable. Like say when a couple gets married and have children. Now having children, especially a newborn baby, like you can't sleep at night, anytime the baby wakes up, it's a lot of anxiety. But still people have children because it brings meaning to their life. So when any cause people dedicate themselves to, when people dedicate to the cause of the nation, when people dedicate themselves to the cause of the environment, that cause has meaning, and when they dedicate themselves, they are ready to take up some suffering because of that. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, please.
So, when you talked about Krishna's purpose is not to incite the war or to incite him to fight, he may not be putting them down to get him fired up, but later in the Gita, we might cover that later, but he does say that it's my will, you're an instrument of my will, they're already there. So it's my design and you're just an instrument. So you do what I'm saying, and that's the right thing to do.
Yes.
So in that sense, can it be construed that yes, he actually designed the whole world?
Okay. 3 different points over here. Yes, Krishna does say Nimitta Matram Bhava Savisachi 1133, that the enemies are killed by my plan, you just become an instrument. That's true. But again, the purpose of the Gita, so that in any talk, nowadays with YouTube, you can just cut videos and you can take statements out of context. So in context, Krishna's purpose is that we humans should harmonize with the divine will. Be an instrument of my compassion means you harmonize with the divine will. That is the key message of the Gita. Now, the divine will at that particular point meant fighting. So, but does that divine will mean fighting all the time? Certainly not. So that's the first point. Again, that particular message is, yes, Krishna wanted Arjuna to fight, but he wanted Arjuna to fight not out of revengefulness, but actually the war was fought not for revenge. The war was fought for justice. The war was fought for establishing order in the world. So the idea was that there are disruptive elements in society, and if they are not stopped, then they will keep disrupting and even devastating society. So they have to be stopped. So sometimes violence is required. But the point of the violence is not revenge. So that's why Krishna tells Arjuna to focus on the cause of justice, not on getting even with others. So that's the point as well. The second is now, was the war his design? Was it designed by him? He himself went as a peace messenger before the war. He tried his best to avoid the war. So it was not that he wanted Duryodhan to fight. As Duryodhan wanted to fight, even though Krishna offered him peace on the most accommodating terms. So it was, so that means that Krishna's purpose was to establish order in the world, to have justice, to have Dharma, to have a fair arrangement in this world. But when the opposite party was not just ready for that at all, then Krishna had no option, he just had to fight. See, there are different ways in which a peace proposal can be scuttled. Again, currently we have the Ukraine-Russia war going on for so long now. So, right at the start of the war, within a month, there was some peace proposal. Both sides seemed to agree to it, but then American pressure scuttled it. One way to scuttle is that for the background, now the report is coming out what exactly happened. And but one is to backdoor, you scuttle the peace proposal. But suppose, let's consider, suppose the president of Russia goes to Ukraine to seek peace. And that means that itself is a very serious gesture. So Krishna was the most powerful person on the Pandava side. He went, he did not send some minister of state or some military general. He himself went. That shows how serious the peace proposal was. And then what did Duryodhan do? There was no backdoor deal to scuttle the peace proposal. There was just a on-the-face rejection. What did Duryodhan say when Krishna offered a peace proposal? Yes, I will not give you enough land to even put the tip of a needle through. If that had been the age of social media, this would have been a viral Insta reel. Kya dialogue hai? But in context, what does it mean? Suppose say we invite someone for some ceremony, some function, some program at our home, and they don't want to come. So they make some excuse. Now they are making an excuse, we know that they are making an excuse, and they know that we know that they are making an excuse. But at least out of courtesy, they are making an excuse, out of politeness. But suppose they say, even if I die, my dead body will never come to your program. Now that is not just a refusal of the invitation, that's a kick in the face of the inviter. So that was the way Duryodhana rejected Krishna's peace proposal. So Krishna wanted orderly settlement in the world, but did he want it through war? Not necessarily. But when the opposite party was obstinate, then there was just no alternative. Okay.
His will was to create order in the world, and the only path left was war. So
Yes.
by fighting, he was harmonizing with God's will.
Yes, perfect. That's true. Thank you. Is here one question? Last question behind we'll have.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Thank you for wonderful clarification insight on Bhagavad Gita. In your class, you said that purpose of Bhagavad Gita is to take Arjuna away from the distress, to remove the Arjuna's distress. And then another point you said that to elevate our consciousness, like you said that beyond that one has to see the law of the God, like elevate our consciousness, like most of the time our thought is, to take peace or happiness from the Bhagavad Gita. But you said that to elevate our consciousness, to see Krishna's love for us, how to understand that, Prabhu?
Most of the time our purpose is to look for happiness through the Gita.
Yeah, peace of the mind, yeah, happiness, have to solve the problems. But you gave another perspective, very nice perspective.
Well, like I said in our life, that if it's one thing to be peaceful, and when the mind is agitated, we want a peaceful mind. That's a good thing. But actually, if you look at ourselves, what is much more valuable is a purposeful mind. Krishna says, Shanta mana. He says, Vyavasayatmika buddhi ekeka kurunandana. So, more important than being peaceful is being purposeful. That when we are disturbed, doing some meditation, coming to a serene place like this, it can make our mind peaceful. That's necessary. At the same time, the purpose of life is not to keep our mind peaceful, because the world is a turbulent place. So it's like if we compare this, that this is the material world is like an ocean. Material existence, it is called Bhavasagar. Now in an ocean, there will always be ups and downs. The waves will always be there. Now, if I think, okay, the part of the ocean I am in is very turbulent. That part of the ocean looks very peaceful. And we strain with our full energy to swim to that part of the ocean. Okay, we get there. Maybe that's peaceful. But is that going to be always peaceful? No. So the point is that in an ocean, we don't look just for a peaceful condition. We focus on going to the land. If we get to the land, then naturally getting to the land will make us peaceful. So in the ocean, Of course, if we are in a turbulent part of the wave, there's a giant wave coming. And if you can dodge that wave, certainly we should dodge the wave. It's not that we have to go in the wave deliberately. But if the path to the land requires us to go through some turbulent waters, we have to be ready for that. So in an ocean, we don't look for a peaceful water. What we rather purposefully we try to move towards the land. So the ultimate land is realization of the reality or the supreme reality of Krishna's love for us. Living in the light of Krishna's love for us. And ultimately, living in the world where that love is the supreme light, is Krishna's personal abode. So, as devotees, we want to be purposeful. If you consider Srila Prabhupada, he was relatively very peaceful living in Vrindavan, taking darshan of the various deities and worshipping the Lord. But he left Vrindavan to go to America. And it's completely foreign land for him. He was 70 years old. He had no money. He had no followers, practically no contacts. It certainly disrupted his peace, at least at external level. But he had a purpose. So bhakti is about being purposeful. And the Gita's message is more about being purposeful than being peaceful. Okay? So, thank you very much.